Hi, welcome to Quilting with Lori. My name is Lori Dickman, and today I am starting part one of my Fall 2023 Mystery Quilt series. There's going to be so much out here that I can't wait to share with you. This is part one. I've got a lot to talk to you about today. A couple of things that are different about this mystery quilt is that I'm going to be doing this just on YouTube, not via Zoom. All of my other mystery quilt classes have all been out there on YouTube. In fact, you can find every one of the mystery quilt patterns that I have done on my channel since 2019. The videos are out there, the PDFs are out there, everything that you need you can find on my YouTube channel. You can also find it on my website, quiltingwithlori.com. The second thing that's just a little bit different than any other mystery quilt that I have done for you is I'm not going to show you what the quilt itself is going to look like, but I am going to show you what all four of the blocks are going to be in this quilt. Two of them will be in the center of the mystery quilt, and a couple of them will be the borders on the corner blocks. So you will get to see that, but you just won't have an idea of how it's all going together. So that will be the surprise for you on how these blocks are actually going to be used within the quilt. You will have PDFs every week. In fact, we start on Monday, I believe it's the 9th of October that I'll be posting this, and then every Monday throughout the rest of October I will be posting another video for the 4 different parts to this mystery quilt. So let's now just take a look at, I want to share with you the fabrics that I am choosing. What I like to do in my mystery quilt classes is teach you how to use your scrap stash. If you're not familiar with my Speedy Solutions to cut and organize your scrap stash, there is a video tutorial that teaches you all about how to get your scrap stash cut, sorted, organized, and ready to use in beautiful quilts. I will link that below in the description box. This is a corresponding book. I also have a corresponding patterns book. So between these two, you not only learn how to get your scrap stash put together, but you also have some wonderful scrappy patterns that you can use. And so in this mystery quilt class, every spring, every fall, I like to teach my students how they can pull from their scrap stash, or if you don't have a scrap stash, how you can just pull from your yardage. And we're all familiar with that. We often go out and purchase yardage to complete a quilt. And then what you'll do with that yardage is simply cut it up into the squares or the parts and pieces necessary for the mystery quilt. Please be sure to like and subscribe to my channel. By subscribing, you will, and also by hitting the notification bell, then you're going to be notified every time that I put a tutorial out there, and that they'll show up in your feed so that you can actually see what's going on and continue watching the mystery quilt classes in particular. They will be uploaded each Monday, so please be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And I'd love it if you hit like and comment. I really enjoy being able to communicate with my subscribers. That's a lot of fun. If you have questions or comments, please don't hesitate to do that. So here is what I have put together for my my fabrics. I have a dark and I have a red. These are, you know, very Christmassy colors, but I have put in here some grunges that have a green and a kind of a blue undertone. My light background fabric has both the green that kind of plays off some of these, as well as the blue, which plays off with these two. So those are the fabrics that I'm using. These are mediums, this is light, this is sort of a medium bright, if you will, and that's my dark. So that's what I'm using. There's a PDF. Make sure that you pull that PDF, and you'll see here that I am sharing with you all of the blocks that we're going to be using to make this quilt. Today, in this series, we're only going to be making block A, which is the beautiful poinsettia block. And I'm going to be using red, dark green, a light fabric, and then a bright green. I'm going to use this bright green right here for those 2 squares. Next week, we'll work on block B. Week number 3, we'll work on the border blocks, and week number 4, we'll work on the corner blocks and then put the quilt together. There's only 4 of these, and we'll put those together. Today, we're going to be making 5 of these beautiful poinsettia blocks. One thing to keep in mind, you don't have to follow the colors that I am using here. Maybe your color scheme in your living room or in your foyer is completely different than this. Maybe it's in some beautiful teals. Whatever you choose to use, you can certainly make this quilt using whatever, or it can even be as scrappy as you want it to be. you can really have a lot of fun with this. You don't have to use Christmas colors is what I'm trying to say. If you are looking for a new Christmas quilt fabric in the fabrics for Christmas, I have a couple of places out on my resource tab in my website, quiltingwithlori.com, and go to the resource tab. You'll find there the Fat Quarter Shop. You'll find Connecting Threads out there, and they have some beautiful Christmas fabrics as well as many other types of fabrics that you can take a look at and see if there's something out there that you'll enjoy. And if not, you also have your scrap stash that you can rely on. And again, this is a great way to use up your scraps that you've already cut up and have ready. They're sorted and organized by lights, mediums, and darks. And you can simply use lights, mediums, and darks as you're putting together all of these blocks. Let's take a look at our PDF and the fabrics that we're going to need to pull for our scrappy block. You'll either need to cut them or pull them, depending on whether or not you've just got yardage you're working with or if you already have a scrap stash, and you can pull the squares from that. So from red, I needed 20 4.5-inch squares, which I have right here. I needed 10 2.5-inch squares, which I have right there. I'm not sure if you can see these squares here or not, but there they are. I needed, of the light background, I needed 40 2.5 by 4.5-inch rectangles. And if you're pulling from your scrap stash, you can certainly pull 5-inch squares, cut them in half, and then trim away a 1/2 inch, and then you've got 2 rectangles from each square. So that's another option for you. Or you can simply cut 2.5-inch width of fabric strips from your light fabric and then subcut them into 4.5-inch lengths. So you need 40 of those, and then we need 20 of the 2.5-inch squares. So I've got 20 of those. From the medium green, right here I have cut 10 of the 2.5-inch squares, or you'll pull them from your stash. From the dark green, we need 20 of the 2.5-inch squares. So this is what we're going to use to make 5 of these poinsettia blocks. So you'll see on your PDF, we're going to be creating 4 of these snowballed squares. So I've simply pulled a 4.5-inch square and a 2.5-inch light, and I'm going to take the light 2.5-inch square. I'm going to line it up as I've done here on this square and make sure that it's lined up properly, because we're going to be snowballing this. This snowball technique we'll be doing on both the squares and the rectangles today, so there'll be a lot of snowballing. Then you are going to take a ruler and draw a line from corner to corner. And because this is a square, when you're snowballing a square, it doesn't really matter which corner you use because it's identical. However, when we get to the rectangles, you will have to be very careful about which corner you are snowballing, and when we get there, I'll explain why. So I have drawn a scant line here. Now when I sew, and we're going to sew on the line, but I often, when I'm doing a snowballing technique, I like to sew on this side of the line, just on that side. And the reason I do that is so that I have allowed room for the turn of fabric, because this fabric has to turn over. And I want there to be enough fabric so that it will make a perfect square here. I don't want to cut myself short. So I'm going to draw the line from corner to corner exactly, but when I actually sew on that line, I'm going to sew just on this side of the line. The closest to the corner is where I'm going to be sewing. And then we're going to take our rulers, we're going to line it up on that 1/4 inch, trim away this excess, so we're going to have another little a triangle set here. You could certainly, when you're sewing this, sew on this line, come over and sew here, give yourself some room in the center, and then you will have automatically created a nice little half square triangle that you can use for another project because you'll have sewn its seam. And I'll show you what I mean by that here just a second. I'm trying to get as close as we can here. So there was my line. In fact, I'm going to draw it with an ink pen so that you can see where the drawn line was. All right, so that was my drawn line, but I stitched maybe a 1/16 of an inch on this side of that drawn line, closest to the corner here, and that allows for the turn of fabric. And when I'm talking turn of fabric, I'm talking where this fabric has to turn over and lay straight like that. This allows for a perfect 4.5 inch square to result. If you stitch on this side of that line or get kind of cockeyed in there, you're not going to have a perfect 4.5 inch square. So that's why I like to, here's my line, but I'm sewing about a 1/16 of an inch on that side. Then what I did in this case, I mean, if you don't want to keep this, you could certainly just put that in your crumbs bin, but I turned around and I stitched here on the way back, and I'm going to cut right here to cut that apart. Let me show you that. So there we go. There's my 4.5 inch square. It doesn't have a complete 1/4 inch seam allowance, but that's okay. It's going to be just fine. And I have another half square triangle unit that I can use for another project. It's sewn. It's probably going to be a 2 inch half square triangle unit. And I can use this in something else. Maybe I can put together a pillow or something with all of these. So I'm going to save these. So that's why I went ahead and I stitched this first, then I turned it around and stitched all the way back. And then I'm cutting in between and ending up with two different pieces. These we don't need for the block. These we do. So we need a total of 20 of these. We've got 5 blocks and we need 4 of these for each of the poinsettia blocks. So I'll make a total of this. I'm going to press this. If you had a full, in fact, I probably could go ahead and press this. Yes, I'm going to press this toward the dark so that it's not under the light, and that's where I will press that. I'll press all of these, square up each one of them to 4.5 inches, and you need 20 of these. So now that you know how to make that one, now let's go to our, here we go, this is what I'm looking for right here. So we have cut a total of 40 of these rectangles. They're 2.5 by 4.5 inches. 20 of them, they're going to be used just like this, plain, just plain old rectangles. 20 of them are going to be snowballed. But it's really important that you snowball the correct corner, not just the correct side, but the correct corner. You want to snowball the upper left corner. So you're going to lay your dark green 2.5 inch square right sides together on the left side of the rectangle, and then you're going to be sure to draw a line starting at the top and going down to the corner, and then that's how you're going to snowball it. You don't want to start down at the bottom and go to the top, then you have created a completely different, it's more of a mirror image if you will, and all 4 of the snowballed rectangles must look just like this, and they're going to go all the way around the poinsettia. So make sure that you make your snowballed rectangle just like this. Take your 2.5 inch dark, and because my dark has trees on them, and because I wanted my trees to be standing up on the rectangle, and obviously as this works its way around the block, it's not going to be identical all the way around, but I placed my grain, if you will, going this direction. So when it opens, my trees are standing up here. So that's what I have done. You don't have to worry about that. That's just something that I chose to do. But again, make sure that when you're snowballing, you are sewing a scant 1/16 of an inch on this side of the drawn line close to this corner here so that you have enough for turn of fabric. Once you've made 20 of these that are snowballed with the dark green, then you're going to square this up to 2.5 by 4.5 inches. So once I finish this, I can go ahead and cut away this excess. And I didn't go ahead and sew this because this little half square triangle would be so itty bitty, I'm not going to mess with something that small. What I'm going to do with these excess pieces is simply put them in my crumb bin, and I'm going to use this to make crumb fabric. So That's what I'm going to do with these. But if you wanted to make itty bitty little half square triangles, you could certainly come back again like I did on the squares, sew another seam allowance and then cut in between there. So there's my rectangle. I am going to press toward the dark, and on the square we pressed toward the dark. And if your dark is your little triangle, then that's, you know, where you would press. It just depends on what you have. We need 4 of these rectangles for each block. So we need a total of 20 again. So you need to make 20 of these. We need to make 20 of these. Once that's done, I'm going to share with you how to put the block together. Once you've sewn your poinsettia units, make sure that gets pressed and squared up to 4.5 inches for each of them. These need to be pressed and squared up to 2.5 by 4.5 inches. So there isn't much that has to come away, but you definitely want to get each of these squared up properly. Now let's see how we're going to put this block together. The blocks are real easy to put together. You can just follow the PDF as it shows you row by row. I'm going to sew them together in 4 rows of 4 units. So the poinsettia themselves go in the center, and make sure that you're orienting each of the squares so it twists a little bit so that the triangle is toward the center to create that pretty poinsettia. These units that you've created that have been snowballed, they are going to go around the block just like this. And I am watching my PDF here to make sure I lay it properly. Then you have the plain rectangles, and they will go just like this. So you've got your pretty little leaves on the poinsettia. And then we are going to put 2 of these. This is a grunge fabric that I'm using. I'm going to put 2 of these in the corner here and 2 of these in the corner here. So when I sew this together, I'm going to sew it together in 4 rows. I'm going to web it together. And I'll start in the upper left. For me, that's here. For you, that would be over here. And I would place this on top of here, bring it to the sewing machine, start stitching, bring this, lay it on top, bring it to the sewing machine, continue stitching, bring this one over, continue stitching, and then this one. And then you'll just pretend that these are all sewn together. So we have these 2 rows are webbed with a thread. Then you come back over here and you grab row 3 and add it. Sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance, bring this one over a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and continue doing that. It's a very easy way to keep everything oriented properly, keep your block the way it should be, and you can put the whole block together so that it's simply webbed with a thread, and then once those rows are webbed, then you can do the columns as well. And your block is done. Then you can press it and square it up to 12.5 inches. I'm going to go ahead and web my block, and I'll bring it back to the tabletop so that you can see it, and we will get it pressed and squared up. So I have my rows stitched together, and here's what I'm doing for pressing. For this top row, I am finger pressing that direction. This row, I'm finger pressing this direction to my right. I guess it would be your left. So I'm just finger pressing that way. So each row is going the opposite direction. This row is being finger pressed to my left or your right. So that's what I would recommend that you do, is press each row in the opposite direction so that when you put this together, it will actually, whoops, I'm supposed to be pressing this way. That way, when you sew it together, they'll nest. You want each of these corners to nest. And by that I mean, now these rows here are ready so I can put the columns together. So I want to nest this so that these just butt together beautifully. And that's what I want to do with each and every one of these corners. I want all of these seam allowances to nest beautifully. So the seam allowance on one side is going that way, and on this side it's going this way. So that's what I would recommend. Then finish sewing it all together and then press at the iron and then square it up to 12.5 inches. My block is done. I love it. It is ready. I have squared it up to 12.5. Not a whole lot had to come away, but that's important that it gets squared up to 12.5 inches. Make sure that you have your 1/4 inch seam allowance here, that you're not losing the points on your dark triangles. I have, as you saw, the rows were pressed in the opposite directions, and then I have everything pressed this way in the columns. So that's how I have pressed everything. I love how it turned out. You need to make 5 of these. Now let's take a look at some scraps. So I went to my scrap stash and I found some red 4.5 inch squares that we can use for the poinsettia. I found a whole bunch of light 2.5 inch squares that we can use for snowballing the corners. I found some bright greens that I can use in the corner, 2 of the corners of the block. I found some dark greens that I can use to snowball the rectangles, and I didn't pull my 5 inch squares, but I was going to pull some 5 inch light squares. I'm going to cut them in half so they're 2.5 inches wide, and then I'll just trim off 1.5 inch off each end, and then I'll have 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles so that I can snowball these greens onto the lights. And then I also have some red 2.5 inch squares, which is what I'll use in these corners. So that is what I'm going to use for my scrappy poinsettia block. And you don't have to use reds. Maybe you'd like to do pinks or teals or whatever color you choose to, or just completely scrappy. Make these just a nice dark. You've got some darks here, some even dark. This is probably more of a medium dark is probably what you want to do. A very dark here. These are all lights, and these are some mediums there. So just have fun. And you can switch out your values. You don't have to follow the value schematic that I'm giving you. This is your quilt, your block. Have fun with it. One of my blocks is done. I have 4 more that I'm going to be preparing, and I also want to get a nice scrappy block like this finished for you as well, and so that you'll have that sample that I'll make sure that's photographed in the video so that you can see that. But I look forward to seeing some of your blocks. Please don't forget to post pictures of the fabrics that you're planning to use or the squares that you plan to use from your stash. Post that out on my Facebook page. It's quiltingwithlori.com, and it's Quilting with Lori on my Facebook page, and then it's a group called Scrap Up Your Stash. And I'm going to have a link below, so you can simply just go to the link in the description box below and click that, and then go on out there and become a member if you're not a member, and then go ahead and start posting some pictures. Everybody would love to see it, and I want to see what my students are going to be using for their mystery quilt, for this beautiful Poinsettias in the Forest mystery quilt for 2023. Thank you so much for joining me today on my part 1 of my mystery quilt class for fall of 2023. And this one is called the Poinsettias in the Forest. Don't forget to grab the PDF in the description box below. Gives you the instructions so you can follow along with the yardage, what you need to cut, and how you need to accomplish that. And this is the block that we've created today. I can't wait to see yours. Please don't forget to post them out on my Facebook group page. Can't wait to see lots of your fabric, your squares that you've chosen, as well as the completed blocks. So if you have questions or comments, please contact me below. You can comment below, or you can even go out into my website, quiltingwithlori.com, and you can contact me there if you have some personal questions that you'd like to ask about the Mystery Quilt class. I'm really excited to be able to get this finished. Can't wait to see yours. So don't forget about posting pictures. And until next week, happy quilting.